Everyone, welcome to Cardano Live. Glad to have you here today. I have today we're going to be talking about voting into Project Catalyst. And what I'd like you to do is check out the link down below in the description. We have links to the voting we have links to Protect, which is the Kenric is the president of. There are links to people's Twitter accounts and so on. So check that out in the description down below. And that way you can pull it up in another web browser and follow along on IdeaScale. If you don't have a account on IdeaScale, making accounts, you can get in there and vote. You can provide kudos, which is the clap icon on IdeaScale, and you can also vote through the Project Catalyst app on your iPhone or Android. Make sure you download that app and you capture your ADA value prior to the snapshots. And the next voting round begins on October 7th. So keep an eye out for October 7th when voting comes online, and check out the links down below so that you can get your vote in for the voting influence IdeaScale and the other projects that you really like to be built on the Cardano ecosystem. So without further ado, I would like to have our guests introduce ourselves. We have Kenric, Andre, and Megan. Kenric, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, and then we'll get into the proposal.
Yes, thank you, Rick. Great to be on your show. My name is Kenric Nelson. I'm the president of Quadratic. We seek to enlighten your pathway. And for Cardano, we're doing that by designing voting methods to help to balance influence across the whole community. And Andre, why don't you go next?
Yeah, thank you. It's really nice to have you all here. And yeah, my name is Andre Vilela, and I'm a physicist. I have a PhD in physics. My field of research is statistical mechanics, and the Nobel Prize went for it yesterday, so I'm very excited about it. And in my research, the focus of my research is to investigate interacting agent-based like models. So I investigate social physics models, econophysics models, and other statistical systems where you have a huge amount of interacting components, So yeah, that's my background. I'm also a visiting professor in Boston University. Right now I'm working from Brazil, and in the city that I born, so I like it very much. So that's it. I'm very excited of using my expertise to help the Cardano community on this task.
That's fantastic, Andre. Thank you, and good luck with your Nobel Prize submission.
Oh yeah, now we have a chance.
Megan, welcome back, Megan.
Oh, thanks. No, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks, Rick, for having us on. So I am with WADA. I've been with WADA since about the beginning of the year. And I have therefore been really integrated into IdeaScale and kind of how the application all the way to voting works. And so have started really thinking about it. I put in my own proposal this round to maybe address an issue with how funding gets allocated, and that's where I met these two. And I actually, I have a degree in physics as well, not as prestigious as Andre, but it's been really exciting talking to these two. I'm sold on this whole vision of how we could improve voting, and so I'm really excited to be part of this team as well.
All right. Thank you, Megan. And I'll see you again later this week with your additional proposal on IdeaScale. So
yes,
thank you for the introductions. And so a little bit of background on Project Catalyst itself. If for those of you that have voted on Project Catalyst, you'll notice that when you can vote, you basically have three options. You can upvote, you can downvote, or you can not vote. So that gives you three different options. You can abstain from the voting. And with each vote, you have the full force of all of your ADA for each project. All right, so that has some pros and cons, and these gentlemen have done some research along with Megan on voting and the influence. So, Kenric, would you like to tell us about some of the background and what you've been doing with Project Catalyst?
Sure. Yeah, sure. And maybe I'll start by saying that Andre and I met while he was working at Boston University. I was a professor at BU for several years, and we were collaborating with a team focused on complex systems and particularly the modeling of social and financial marketplaces. And as Andre noted, just this week, there was an announcement that the Nobel Prize has been given for study in complex systems. And so it's that class of work that we're trying to now apply to the Cardano community. And in particular, what caught my eye is that Cardano has been very committed to building a broad-based, diverse community throughout the globe. At the same time, the implementation of the voting system is a good first start, where we currently have one vote is awarded for each ADA that you own. However, if we could shift that model to more like one ADA gives you one voting influence, and the way we measure that influence is more balanced, then we think we can preserve the integrity of a truly balanced community where influence is diverse. And I'll let Andre talk a little bit more about how he simulates these kinds of systems and how those simulations can help us design a better approach to voting.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yes, yeah, the focus of my work is in investigating those voting systems. So I have several papers on different journals where I investigate this influence. So, yeah, I suppose that we have a community and composed by interacting agents, so people that before deciding, they talk with their friends, their parents, they read articles on the web, and then they decide how to vote or how to choose an option. So I simulate those systems in my computer, and we discovered several non-obvious features, like, yeah, you may have influencers and they are not helping to improve consensus in communities. So you regularly think the opposite. No, those influences can get people looking at that direction. No, in the end, they weaken consensus of when they are working on that. So there are a lot of no obvious results from this research. I simulate those systems using powerful computers, and that we have in Brazil and that we also use it in US. And yes, I think voting. Everyone has a great idea about voting, but voting in such systems can, hide some strange features that you don't want for them to arise. Like in our research, our focus here is we want everyone to vote, and we don't want to prevent anyone from vote. Oh no, you are too rich, don't vote. You are going to dominate the election. No, you are too poor, don't vote. No, we don't want that. We want everyone to vote. And we want to develop a system where you are not, incentivized to split your wallets. So it doesn't matter if you have 1 or 10 wallets; it will count as the same. And we want every vote to count fair, so in a fair way. So you have a small voting power, but each vote counts. And we also are focusing in for people to express preference. So yeah, I'm gonna vote stronger on this one because this one is really good, really good. And that's the focus of my research and my work on physics and on Cardano community. So we want to improve. We don't want to decrease, influence of anyone. We want to improve. We want to incentivize people to hold a lot of ADA, big wallets. But
thanks, Andre. And maybe Megan could describe
yeah,
why this is important for the WADA community, particularly, and how she got interested in working with us.
Yeah, I also want to just take a minute to maybe paint the bigger picture of where we're at right now. So we have received funding from Fund 4 to do some of this preliminary research in terms of picking which model we want to pursue, and have started actually receiving some data on past voting statistics so that we can use actual data to analyze sort of what's happening. And what we're proposing for Fund 6 is to actually go the next step and simulate what this would look like. And we'll be able to do so, like I said, with receiving that data, we'll be able to sort of show how it actually works. Because some of these concepts are really technical mathematically, but can be sort of simplified, I think, for people to understand, especially if you have a way to model it. So now I lost my train of thought with the introduction, but I just wanted to say the thing that really drew me to kind of what they've already started and now what I'm joining them on is kind of what Andre said, but I'll just repeat it on a really high level. We want to maintain sort of that everyone can vote. That we don't want to encourage people splitting their wallets. If we put sort of why don't you just put a cap, and then you eliminate these high wallets making all the decisions, but then you're incentivizing people to maybe create multiple wallets. We don't want to encourage that, but we want people's votes to count in a fair way. If you only have 500 ADA, it might feel that, yeah, you're voting, you're getting your opinion out there. But what we're trying to really analyze is, what is the actual voting power of that 500 ADA? Do they actually have a say in the decision at all? And then finally, we want to maybe go towards expressing a preference. So getting away from this whole concept of unbiased voting. Rick, you explained it very well in the beginning. You kind of see each proposal, you give it a thumbs up, a thumbs down, or an abstain. And how much are we really taking time to analyze each of the proposals before giving it a thumbs up or a thumbs down? I mean, it would be great if we abstained from all proposals that we hadn't read properly. But are people doing that? Is the title, a deciding factor? So we wanted to kind of incentivize a more efficient, and basically make voting more efficient as well, especially as we're getting more people into the community. And, as Kenric pointed out in the beginning, the just disparity of wealth of the people joining is so broad.
Yes, thank you for that, Megan, and Kenric and Andre as well. And the reason I like this proposal, I'm very interested in it, is IOG has done a lot of research on incentives and implementation on getting this to work. They've done a fantastic job. I like the idea of a third party taking a look at the voting process and the capabilities, finding the pain points, and finding where optimizations can be had. And I think that really improves the voting process because you have multiple entities having a look at, how is this supposed to work? What is the best way to get there? Does it validate some of the ideas that have already been implemented? And does it help us find ideas that are even better yet, that can yet to be implemented? So that's why I find this proposal so interesting. So I appreciate your work here. Did you want to continue with what was covered on Fund 4 that you touched on, Megan? What the work that was done, the work going on today, and then what you plan on Fund 6 with the agent-based modeling and all that kind of stuff?
Well, and what I could do, Rick, is describe a little bit what the chief concern is and why we think it's important for the community to take a look at this and be more informed about it. In any economic system, there's a lot of data that shows that wealth tends to be distributed by what's called a power law. And what that means is that there's a lot of people that are not very wealthy, and then there's very long tails where the wealth gets orders of magnitude higher. Now, that's already exists in the cryptocurrency space. It's already part of the distribution we've analyzed, and our data shows that that's true in the Cardano network. If you then combine that with making that the basis of voting power, then on the one hand, you get the benefit. And so let's be clear about the positives of that. The positives of that are the people who are invested and who have really committed themselves to the community through putting their wealth in ADA get to have a stronger voice. We do want to continue to support that. But we don't want it to be in such a dominant way that just a few people end up being the real decision makers. What you can do is for every ADA, rather than giving one vote, you can do something like take the square root of their ADA. And that kind of levels the playing field a lot. And in particular, what we want to look at is sort of given the actual distribution in the Cardano community, what should that nonlinear function be? And we are hopeful that this will work in a very similar way to the saturation curves that were designed for the stake pooling operation. There, they had a similar problem in that Cardano was committed to having a very decentralized operation of the validation of transactions. And they've had a lot of success in getting now thousands of active pools up and running. And part of how they did that is they made sure that as a pool became more wealthy, its profitability would saturate. We want to do something similar with the voting power. There should be some kind of saturation limit in how much power you have in making decisions for the community.
Okay, thanks for that description. And that's the goal you're headed. There's another thing, I don't know if you guys are touching on it, but in the future, there's supposed to be where you can vote for an expert and then the expert votes on your behalf. So we'll see how that plays out. Have you guys looked at that at all yet? Or are you still focused on what we currently have?
We do want to do that. Would you like to address that, Andre? We are planning to look at that. Or
Yes. I think that of course that we can take a look on that option, but our focus is to design something easier for the general public to participate. You are going to choose someone to vote for you anyway. So how are you going to do that? And is he going to vote as you like for every project? I think, of course, that the community gets more engaged and you get rich options showing there. But I think you are also complicating things, a lot by doing that. In Brazil, we don't have good experience by delegating our votes, to politicians. And I'm concerned about that in a community much more broader as we have in Cardano. So yes, we like the idea because it's good, but we are considering how to implement it and what is the real effects of doing that.
Yeah, and Rick, I can expand upon that a little bit. So I think representative democracy is important, and that will be an important feature of the future plans for Cardano. But here's the concern I have with if we do that, given the current design, is that it becomes a much more centralized process. And given this power law distribution, that problem gets exacerbated even more so. So what we're going to offer as a kind of way for that to segue into that in a better way is the following: that rather than a voter being asked to vote across all the proposals and thereby being overwhelmed and really not having, it's impossible to have expertise, even if you're very active in the community, across all these proposals. Mm-hmm. So rather, you're going to have, your votes are going to be treated more like a budget, and you decide what projects are important to you, whether you have either a strong positive or negative opinion about that project. And now you think of it as sort of investing in different proposals. That way, the community, you will get then a kind of crowdsourcing effect about understanding the community's preferences better. And now you could then, in that context, maybe you still want to have some of your budget go to a particular expert who you trust. But now you would also apply this kind of square root or power law type of process so that that representative doesn't become someone who controls the decision making by themselves. They become a part, they become a significant and influential part of the community, but they're not so dominant that everyone else who has independent opinions they want to express no longer has the opportunity to do that.
Yes, this is a common problem in big companies. So you have a manager that knows something or some operation that he can, you know, obtain some advantage, and he can try to dominate the vote in that company to for all the money go to that project. So we want to for that to not to happen. We want for the whole process can still keep transparent for everyone, and we don't want those managers that know more than the others to eventually dominate some decision process. But that's it.
The process that you've described so far is exactly my observation. It's hard to understand all of the different aspects because Project Catalyst is so extensive and there's many different projects. I've seen it in the hundreds. I don't know how many are on there now for Fund 6 for voting, but it's a lot, and it's a lot to digest. And also with respect to the voting weight, you described something called the square root. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because my basic understanding is if someone has 1,000,000 ADA and you use the square root, that would be 1,000 ADA, for example. Make it easy for me to understand.
Yeah. Exactly.
But if someone has 100 ADA, the square root is 10. And then the difference between 100 ADA and 1,000,000 is massive. The difference between 10 and 1,000 is less massive. And it still allows the greatest amount of ADA voted to win, but it also affords people with less ADA to still have a valuable input. So
yes, that's it.
And
did I understand that correctly? That's kind of how you guys describe
That's a great description of it, Rick. And here's the really interesting point. So this came out of many years of research in democratic processes. And what scientists discovered is that there are important principles about particularly how representative governments work that turn out to have this square root or quadratic property. And so that's the first one we're looking at because it has a lot of support in the scientific literature as to why this particular function gives you a more balanced influence on something that's called the voting power index. What this index is it's the probability that your vote will be the deciding vote as to whether a project is funded or not funded. And so you can imagine that someone who has a small size wallet will have a very small probability of being that decisive vote, whereas someone with a large wallet will have a very high probability. Now, if you just do it one coin, one vote, the disparity between that power index is quite extreme. But if you use this square root law, now you have more balance. So then, yes, the larger wallet is still going to have a higher probability, but it's not going to be orders of magnitude higher. And if a large community of smaller wallets has a kind of common opinion about something, they'll still be able to voice that opinion and be decisive as a community.
And it's important to note that the square root we are using it here for to clarify our ideas for the listeners of this podcast, but we are investigating other powers, other functions, to map this ADA wallet into voting power. We are investigating this. So we can continue with the square root, but yeah, we are investigating more.
I'd love to
Exactly.
see you
I
guys
think
do
that's the
research.
key. Sorry.
Megan? No,
No,
go,
I think
please.
that's a key component. We think it's a great idea, but we want to also make sure the community, sees why it's such a great idea and hopefully agrees. But if not, that we can work to change whatever the community wants. I think just to follow up with this idea of the square root. Another way, sort of the next step of that is really this budget voting. So not only are you decreasing the total power of one wallet, but also if that person, let's say they had the $10,000 wallet, so we take the square root and it's 100, right? They have 100 voting power. Now, what they can spend those votes on, and this is just the most simplified example, they could sort of vote 111 on 100 different proposals. Or maybe they're really passionate about a couple ones and they can put all of their voting power into one proposal. Now, what that would cost them is, so the first vote costs 1, the second vote costs 2 squared, and et cetera. So if we say they wanted to put 10 votes in, 10 squared is 100, they could put 10 votes into one proposal. So it costs the same for them to put 10 votes into one proposal or one vote into each of 100 proposals. But that way their influence is sort of checked again in terms of any given proposal, how much influence they can have.
Yeah, so what Megan is describing is something called quadratic voting. And again, there's quite a bit of literature that I would encourage people to dive into because it's really quite fascinating. And what she's describing is a way of making sure that people are cautious about making strong opinions. So if you have a very strong opinion, you want to be able to express that. But that's going to cost you more because each time you get stronger in your opinion, the cost goes up quadratically. Whereas if you have more modest opinions, you can spread more of your budget across more proposals. So it's a very interesting way to make sure that communities are expressing their real opinions rather than exaggerating and always expressing very strong opinions. And again, that what scientists studying this have found is that it turns out to form very nice bell curve shaped curves about people's preferences. So you get a lot of nuance about what the community's opinions are on different projects.
Yeah, and just to clarify that, this is a two. Let's say that this is a two-stage research. The first one is how to map your ADAs in a voting power, and the second is how to vote with this voting power. So the quadratic voting is a model where each vote that you cast, it will cost. It's the number is squared. Like one vote costs 1, and 2 votes in that proposal will cost you 4 of your voting power. 3 votes in that proposal, it will cost for you 9, and so on and so forth. So there are two. This is a twofold, investigation. The first, how to map ADA in voting power. Second, how to get this voting power in a decision process. So this is why we are so excited. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good to hear. And, I hope the implementation in the long run, right now we're on Fund 6 and Fund 7. You have the challenge in on Fund 7. And what I'm imagining in my own mind is through many iterations, Fund 8, 9, 10, and so on, into the future, eventually there's going to be a solution emerge that can be submitted as a proposal to be implemented, where we say, hey, this is the community shown enough interest. We've got enough iterative funds we got approved. And then now we have something that can be implemented either via CIP or a Project Catalyst proposal itself to implement the process. Is that the future end goal is out sometime in the next couple of years?
Yeah, exactly. So Under Fund 6, we're seeking a Plutus developer to join our team to help us with the specifications for future development. And then the Fund 7 challenge is to fund a team prototyping the systems we recommend. And as you said, I'm hopeful by the end of Fund 7 that we can start to have some discussions with either IOG or the other teams that are responsible for the Voltaire phase of Cardano's roadmap. And we can get integrated with them in providing some of the outcomes of this research into the Voltaire plan.
Excellent. So there's a long-term vision to where, this type of research can actually be implemented on the Cardano ecosystem. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. I would like to remind the viewers, check out the links down below to the Project Catalyst proposal. Make an account on IdeaScale. Get in there on IdeaScale and leave some claps and kudos for the proposers for Project Catalyst proposals. And voting starts on October 7th for Fund 6. While you're down there in the description, smash that like button, smash that subscribe button, boost the metrics on the channel. Thank you for that. And we'll go back into, also want to remind viewers, feel free to ask questions. Let us know if you have questions while we have Kenric and Andre here during the live stream. And Megan, if you also have anything you want to add, we will be wrapping up, I'd say, in about 10 minutes. We've been going almost 30 minutes now, and it's been a very good podcast so far. So what else can we talk about here? One thing I had a question was on the agent-based modeling. People might want to know a little bit more about that. How do you model voters before you actually implement something and send it out there? And I used to talk with a fella who he has a PhD in mathematics, and he told me how agent-based modeling works. And myself and my friend came up with the best description. You know how when people are using a map app and I'm in this location and I want to travel to another location, and there's so what the map apps do is there's a certain number of roads and the models understand how fast is the road, does it have stoplights, is it a freeway, and it actually use some sort of agent-based modeling in the background. The older ones used to say calculating 30,000 different possible paths, 20,000, 10,000, until it came up with one, and it gave you the best way to get from Richmond to Washington, D.C. based on that. So I'm assuming the agent-based modeling works the same way, where you put in certain parameters and limitations, and then the agents.
Let's talk about dreams, right? Because this is my motivation of investigate those systems. Agent-based systems or in models, this is a very broad and rich environment in field of investigation for physicists and mathematicians. And you have many different applications. And if you narrow it down, I'm trying to investigate how to use those agent-based models to try to anticipate or understand and try to discover, hiding features of these social phenomena. So I think that every decision that we make in living in a society, buying or selling, voting this candidate or not, or picking this brand of car or this other, every decision that we make, get a vaccine or not, every decision that we make, everything that you look and see happening in our society is governed by social interactions, So you may have a very good model for explaining epidemics, but in the end, you are going to call your friends, say, hey, are you going out or not? No, I'm not. I'm staying safe in my house, or I'm getting a vaccine. And so you start to, okay, maybe I should get it too. So I believe that every social phenomena that's modeled in different approaches, maybe analytical equations and that stuff, they have their core is on social decisions and agent interactions. So I think social physics is on the core of every big phenomena that we see in our society. Like, let's investigate more about Cardano network because it's nice. You're doing that because a lot of people are doing that. So, and then later you perceive that no, it's very good. So you start to talk about it with your friends. So in my models, I try to unveil, those features that we see in our society. And then I start modeling a system where you have people and you have, let's say, a network of interactions. And I investigate if you interact with more people or less people, and how this interaction, which is mapped under the complex network framework, which is something very big in complex systems right now in the recent years. So
well, and Andre,
yeah,
maybe we can connect this with an interesting question that Ken has asked in the chat room here, because I'll take his second question first. He asks, what does it mean for a vote to be decisive if you don't know ahead of time what the votes are going to be? So what we're going to do is we apply statistical analysis to this. Yeah. So given your voting power in comparison with the voting power of the whole community, what's the probability that if everyone's votes are kind of distributed in different random ways, how many times would your vote end up being the one that's decisive, that sways the decision one way or another? So if you have a small wallet, it's going to be a small probability. If you have a large wallet, it's going to be a large probability. Now that gets to this question of liquid democracy, where now I'm given the choice of either voting directly on projects, or I can delegate my vote to someone else in the community that maybe has more expertise. There's a lot of nice, attractive features to that because it simplifies the decision process for individuals. Rather than having to decide on all the proposals, maybe they just decide on a few experts. However, the problem becomes that now the wallet distributions are even more extreme because those representatives now are going to become, like, in a sense, like large staking pools. And if you allow them to grow to any size, then just a few experts are going to control the decision process. So the liquid democracy, I think, is an important advance and something that we should be seeking to implement. But we want to be careful in how we do it so that it doesn't just drown out people's real choices about different proposals.
Thank you for that explanation.
Yeah,
and I look at it kind of like sports, where if a vote won by 10,000 and there's only one wallet that had 11,000 in it, well, that's the guy who scored the winning touchdown, right?
It's even worse. It's even worse than that. If you have a election where people are like 50-50, so just if you have some small group of voters and they already decided, like, no, we are going to vote like that, regardless of what happens, those guys can dominate the election. You see that something close to the square root of the total number of votes is sufficient to control like 87% of the result. It's like that. So it's huge what I'm telling you here. So if you have an election where you don't know in who you are going to vote, just the square root of the number of votes can achieve the desired result of them with 90% of probability. So this is huge. You don't want that to happen, because it's just a small number. If you have, I don't know, 10,000 votes, 100 votes, a block of 100 votes can get the desired result in this scenario. Which scenario? A scenario where people doesn't know in which option they are going to vote. If you have 100 guys that they know, they can decide the election with 87% of probability. So this is very interesting, I think. Yeah.
It is. Yep. And I would like to make note that even the original design that IOG has deployed on the network is still, it's pretty darn good, where the greatest stakeholders have the most interest in securing the system, so they will vote in their best interest in order to better Cardano. So that is a very good approach, but there's always room for improvement, and the the type of research and solutions that you're driving towards here seems like a really good idea in order to improve an already pretty good system.
Yeah.
But everything's up for
exactly.
improvement.
Yes, it is.
Excellent. Thank you. And thank you, Ken Stanton, for those questions that you had over there in the chat. We're about to wrap up the podcast. So thanks for the questions we have so far. Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on today before we wrap up for the day?
I think this was great, Rick. I really appreciate you having us on. It's a great opportunity to talk a little more directly with the community about what we're trying to accomplish.
Excellent. Thank you, Kenric. Andre.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Yeah, I invite you all to research about opinion dynamics and voting systems and mechanisms. You'll find that it's a very exciting field for everyone to improve.
Thank you, Andre.
Yeah, I'll reiterate the thanks. We're excited about kind of getting these ideas out there and welcoming feedback. So look out for us, on future town halls and things like that to continue the discussion with the community.
All right. Thank you, Megan. And thank you, Kenric. Andre, I appreciate you being here. Just give me a holler anytime. You guys know how to reach me. You come back on over to Cardano Live, especially after the Fund 6 and as Fund 7 goes out. We want to make sure everybody understands very well the importance of the type of research you're doing and that they have a vote, So viewers, please check out the links down below. Make sure you get on IdeaScale. Make an account on IdeaScale and get that Catalyst app installed on your iPhone, your Android. Make sure you get your snapshots in, and then to register to vote, and then read up and vote. We need everybody participating. We've had great participation in the votes so far, and we want to see it get even better and better as the years go by. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.